Welcome back to Old Legends, the channel where history is more than just dates and names. It's a living story that shaped the world we know today. When people hear the word Viking, most imagine fierce warriors with axes and shields charging off longships to raid villages. The image is so strong that it has become the symbol of the Viking Age. But what if I told you that this picture is only half the truth? Behind the warriors, the raids, and the conquests, there existed another force just as vital, just as powerful, but often forgotten: the women of the Viking world. Viking women were not silent figures hidden in the shadows. They were the backbone of society, the keepers of culture, the builders of families, and sometimes even warriors who stood shoulder to shoulder with men. In an age where women in most societies were stripped of rights, Viking women lived with freedoms that shocked their medieval neighbors. They could inherit land, divorce husbands, run businesses, and make choices that shaped not only their families, but their entire communities. But their influence didn't stop at home. Some guided their people spiritually as seers, others carried Viking culture across oceans as settlers, and legends even speak of shieldmaidens, fearless women who took up arms and fought in battle. Whether real, mythical, or a blend of both, these women left an indelible mark on history. Without them, the Viking Age could not have thrived, and the legacy of the Norse would look very different. So today we'll set aside the longships and axes and instead uncover the untold story of Viking women. From the farms they built to the magic they practiced, from the power they held in marriages to the legends they inspired, this is the saga of the women who defined the North. To understand Viking women, we must first step into their everyday world. A place where life was tough, but also where women carried immense responsibility. Imagine waking up in a longhouse, the air filled with the smell of smoke from the fire pit in the center. The longhouse was not just a home, it was the heart of Viking life. And in this space, women ruled. A Viking woman's day began early. She oversaw the household, but this was not just housework in the modern sense. It meant running an entire farm, managing servants or thralls, and making sure food was stored for long winters. Women were skilled in weaving, making clothes from wool, brewing ale, and preparing meals. But beyond that, they handled trade within their community, managed livestock, and even decided how resources were distributed. In many ways, they were the CEOs of the Viking household. One remarkable thing is that Viking society respected these roles. A woman who ran a farm was not seen as weak or secondary. She was vital. Men could sail off on raids for months, even years, but the farms, children, and communities continued to thrive because women held everything together. Without them, Viking society would have collapsed. Archaeologists have found keys buried with Viking women in graves. These weren't just ordinary keys, they symbolized authority. The woman of the house controlled the family's wealth, food, and supplies. When you held the keys, you held power. In many other medieval cultures, women were excluded from property ownership. But in the Viking world, women could inherit land, own property, and even pass it on to their children. Daily life also meant raising children, teaching them Norse traditions, and preparing sons and daughters for the harsh realities of the world. Daughters learned the skills of their mothers, while sons were guided until they were old enough to train as warriors or traders. But even here, women influenced decisions. Marriages, alliances, and family honor often rested in their hands. So when we picture Viking women, we must look beyond the stereotypes of passive wives. Marriage in the Viking world was more than just romance. It was strategy, alliance, and survival. Families used marriage to strengthen bonds between clans, secure land, and even make peace after conflicts. But unlike many medieval societies, Viking women had a voice in these unions. They weren't simply given away. Their opinions mattered, and once married, they carried rights that shocked their European neighbors. A Viking wedding was a grand affair, often lasting days, filled with feasting, drinking, and rituals to honor the gods. Women stepped into their new lives with pride, for marriage did not strip them of identity. It expanded their influence. Once married, a woman became the keeper of the household, the manager of property, and often the diplomat within the family. But here's what truly sets Viking women apart. their right to divorce. If a woman was unhappy, if her husband mistreated her, failed to provide, or broke her trust, she could end the marriage. Imagine this in the 9th century, when women in most of Europe were seen as property themselves. Viking women could reclaim their dowries and walk away with dignity. This level of freedom was almost unheard of in their time. Love also had its place. The sagas and poems speak of deep affection between husbands and wives, even passion. While many marriages were arranged, love was not absent in the Viking Age. In fact, poems describe women as the delight of men and celebrate the bond between couples. It shows us that Viking relationships were not just cold contracts, they could be warm, vibrant, and filled with emotion. So in Viking society, marriage was more than a cage. It was a partnership, sometimes an alliance, and always a stage where women held real authority. And if things went wrong, Viking women had the strength and legal right to choose their own fate. When we hear the word Vikings, the image of fierce warriors immediately comes to mind. Horned helmets, though historically inaccurate, long ships slicing through the seas, and warriors clashing in bloody battles. But what about women on the battlefield? Did Viking women really fight as warriors, or is it just a myth born from sagas and modern imagination? The Norse sagas give us thrilling tales of shieldmaidens, women who took up arms, fought alongside men, and carved their names into legend. Figures like Lagertha, said to have fought with Ragnar Lothbrok, capture our imagination. The sagas describe women leading charges, standing shoulder to shoulder with men, and earning respect through strength and courage. These stories were passed down through oral tradition, leaving us with a mix of history and myth. But archaeology is starting to blur the line between fiction and fact. In 2017, researchers re-examined a famous Viking grave in Birka, Sweden. For over a century, scholars believed it belonged to a male warrior because of the weapons buried there: swords, shields, and arrows. Yet DNA testing revealed something stunning. The warrior was a woman. She wasn't just placed with weapons for symbolism, her burial shows she was honored as a warrior of high status. This discovery shook historians and proved that women could and did hold warrior roles. Still, not every Viking woman fought in battle. Shield maidens were likely rare, and the majority of women served vital roles at home, in trade, and in religion. Yet the possibility of women warriors tells us something powerful about Norse culture. Bravery and skill were respected, no matter your gender. If you could fight, you earned your place. Even beyond the battlefield, Viking women showed warrior-like strength in other ways. They defended farms when raiders came, they negotiated with kings and chieftains, and they stood as protectors of their families. The spirit of the shield maiden wasn't just about wielding a sword, it was about embodying fearlessness in a harsh and unforgiving world. So were Viking women warriors? The answer is both yes and no. While most lived daily lives of farming and family, there were exceptional women who rose to legendary status with sword in hand. And whether through saga, song, or science, their legacy proves that the Viking Age was not just an era of men, but of fearless women who refused to be forgotten. The story of Viking women is not a tale of shadows. It is a story of strength, resilience, and influence. From the mistresses of the household holding the keys to prosperity, to the seeresses weaving fate with their words, to the bold explorers who dared to cross oceans, Viking women were more than just figures in the background. They were builders, traders, storytellers, and in rare cases, even warriors who challenged the expectations of their age. Yes, the Viking world was patriarchal. Men dominated the battlefields, politics, and voyages of conquest. But the sagas and archaeology reveal something deeper. Women carved their own space in that harsh and unforgiving world. They managed homes that were the backbone of society, kept the economy alive through textiles and trade, and used the law to secure rights that women in other parts of Europe could only dream of. They were, in many ways, centuries ahead of their time. Think of Aud the Deep-Minded, who commanded her own ship and led her people to settle in Iceland. Think of Thyra Danebod, who fortified Denmark against invasion. Think of the Völva, whose voice carried divine power in a world that revered prophecy. And yes, think even of the shield maidens, whether legend or reality, whose image still inspires stories of courage today. Their legacy shows us that Viking society was not black and white. It was layered, complex, and often contradictory. But in those contradictions, women found ways to wield influence, shape history, and etch their names into memory. So the next time you hear the word Viking, don't just picture longships, axes, and bearded warriors. Picture the woman with the keys on her belt, running the homestead. Picture the seeress in a cloak of blue, speaking truths that kings dared not ignore. Picture the queen who built defenses and the daughter who sailed across oceans. That is the full story of the Viking Age. And now we want to hear from you. Which Viking woman's story inspired you the most? Was it the fearless Freydis, the wise Aud, or the mystical Völva? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's keep this history alive together. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden world of Viking women, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more epic history from old legends, and share this video with someone who loves discovering the untold side of the past. The Viking Age is over, but its stories live on, and here at Old Legends we'll keep bringing them back to life.